I was born in Italy, in Siena in fact. I moved to Canada with my family. My family moved to Canada in '79 when I was 16, during the time of Renegades, Aldo Moro and so on, for those of you who know a bit of Italian history. And came here, did my university degree, moved to Cambridge as a postdoc for 5 years, and then worked at Natural Resources Canada, the lab that Mark Kodas will talk about a few minutes, well, after my talk. And I've been at McMaster since 2001. So I'm very proud to be Italian and giving this talk to you. So I'll talk about, as the title says, about illustrating the material structure atom by atom, and that means that we use advanced characterization technique. I just came at the end of the previous talk, and you saw that microscopy plays an important role in understanding material structure. What I want to give you is an idea of what we can do with the very advanced infrastructure we have at McMaster. And it's actually unique by world standards. So it's just half an hour, not even 15 minutes from here. Actually, you can walk from here to McMaster, but it's a very recognized worldwide center in electron microscopy. And these are some examples of the work and the infrastructure we have. I'll describe that in detail. So, a few words about the Canadian Center for Electron Microscopy, the CCM as it is known. So we proposed this project in just almost not even a year I was at McMaster. We submitted a proposal which included 24 academic institutions. There are many more universities in Canada than those, so we didn't just grab every university left and right, but we selected top universities. We worked with 12 research government laboratories, including Natural Resources Canada, CanMet, and the National Research Council Institute, a number of them, several international partners, and also industry, mostly local industry. And this was a project funded at a level of about $19 million, and today the CCM includes about $40 million of infrastructure, accumulated from prior to the creation of the center, but also a few years after the major infrastructure was installed. We started in 2005, the designing of the facility, and this is how we started. It's actually a very memorable picture to see how we start from designing an infrastructure and actually seeing operational very quickly, thanks to very competent engineering firms in the area. In 2008, we had a grand opening attended by leaders in the microscopy field, international microscopy field. And today we have an infrastructure that is regarded as one of the best by world standards. We have centers such as the Berkeley National Center, the DOE Center for Microscopy, envious of what we're able to do at McMaster. And some of the instruments such as these are really ultra high resolution electron microscopes. They would be comparable probably to about 5 today. They were installed in 2008. Even today, they're about the top 5 electron microscope facilities in the world. And I would say in some areas we're really at the top level, #1. And these are the people, some of the sort of permanently convened universities that are operating in infrastructure. We have people with PhD degrees, masters, technical degrees, and we are able to help users from at a national level in many techniques, and I will describe some of these techniques later. They're abbreviated here with these acronyms here. I'll describe them in a few slides. So these are in more detail the microscope. So this is, I would say, these two instruments here, the transmission electron microscope, I'll describe how they work, that are unique by world standards, then others that are unique by Canadian standards, and the combination, again, makes it unique. Having these microscopes from the ultra-high resolution microscope, the resolution able to see atoms, to the 26-year-old microscope, this combination is unique. And we are able to provide users from analysis, being able to unveil the structure of proteins, so the mechanism of life, operation of cells, to polymers, and going to steels used for pipelines and quantum dots for photovoltaics applications. These are some of the other instruments that have been installed more recently. A surface analysis tool called Auger. This is a variable pressure scanning electron microscope. This is a high resolution scanning electron microscope. This was the latest instrument. It's a 3-dimensional atom probe. And this is one of the best scanning electron microscopes available in Canada at the moment. So how do we do in terms of users? We have, so basically over the last, usually we have statistics from the inception of the center, but if you look at the last 2 years, these are the number of users from different provinces. So they range from one user per province, for example, from Saskatchewan, or small provinces in Canada, to, of course, provinces like Ontario, where we have a major group of users. So if you combine, look at the number of users, the fraction, mostly from Ontario and McMaster, we have about 13% of the users from international facilities. So Ontario and non-McMaster, so I apologize. Ontario only, including McMaster, 11% McMaster, and then we have users from other provinces. We have 52 industrial users, and these range from the small companies with just maybe 2 or 3 employees to large companies such as Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, Novelis, working in a range of fields. So we are being, so you can see this is quite a large numbers of companies that we help solving day-to-day problems and also solving long-term problems, such as issues in power plants, nuclear power plants. And we have a number of international visitors. As I said, we have a really good infrastructure, so people from Cambridge universities, they would come and use our facilities. From MIT, Brookhaven National Lab, this is a really good laboratory microscopy, and very good universities, they would come and use our facility, even from Max Planck institutes in Germany. And we have just recently some users from University of Milan and some in Italy. So one of the last instruments we saw was this one is a atomic, so a high resolution atom probe tomography system. I'll describe how it works in the next slide. So this was installed just about over a year ago. Latest technology, and for this instrument, what we can do is actually pull atoms from a sample one by one, and that's what I mean by atomic analysis one by one. I think I have a slide, so I'll get there shortly. So in terms of areas of research, we cover many global problems, from, let's say, environment. We're helping some researchers, academic researchers, looking at contaminants in tailing ponds, looking at geosequestration of carbon dioxide, bacterial remediation of some contaminants. We do have carbon capture research going on. In the area of nanoelectronics, these are some of the topics, from silicon germanium for faster electronics to plasmonic. This is the field where we combine photons to electrons to enhance detection or transmit information in optical computers, to light-emitting diodes. So, you know, you can see if you go to the shops today, you can buy these light-emitting diodes, you can plug into in your home. We work in the area of energy, fuel cells, hydrogen storage, battery materials, to the areas of health, structural biology, and so on. So this is really a very broad user base of researchers using our facilities, and also industrial users who come and use these capabilities. And we have both the application areas, we develop new materials, or trying to understand fundamentals of materials, down to the theory, electronic structure, how electrons actually propagate in a specimen and give rise to signals. So we do quite a broad range of research in the center. So what can you do more specifically? So I wanted to show these slides. This is taken somewhere from the web, and just acknowledged here at the bottom. So to give an idea of what microscopy, the level of microscopy we can do, I think I want to show this slide here, because it gives an idea of the length scales. So everybody's familiar with the size of an ant, okay? We're familiar with size of human hair, okay? So this is something we can do with probably resolution. Human hair is typically in the range of 10 to 50 microns in size. Maybe thick hairs would be, can go up to 100 microns or so. So these are the units. So 100 microns is the, so 10 to the minus 4 meters, the size of a human hair. And just for fun, what we can do is technique. James, you can click on this box here. So with the tools we have, we can actually, this is a human hair, we can do something useful such as write the logo of McMaster. This was one of the first things we did when we got our nano machining tool. So this is really very, very low resolution for us, this kind of application, right? So this is only 800 times human hair. We want to go orders of magnitude higher resolution. James, you can go back. So if you go to a factor of no, sorry, go back, please. Can you click on this slide? Thanks. To go back an order of 10, this is the size of red blood cells that flow in your veins. Then another factor of 10, this is the micron size. This is maybe what you can, well, it's 100th of a human hair size. And a few times, well, a fraction of a red blood cell. If you go again by another factor of 10, and if you go by another factor of 10, you have the units of nanometers. And this is where nanomaterials come in. So it gives an idea of how many times we divided by 10 to get to these levels. And this is what we can image now with a microscope. So we can image at the 100 nanometer scale, and if James, when you click on that, this is where new structures like carbon nanotubes, you heard about probably carbon nanotubes. These are very thin, just like straws, I mean polymers, but made out of carbon atoms, just rolled up like a sheet. This is one single nanotube, and the size here, the width here is 1.4 nanometers. This is, so human hair is 10,000 times larger than this. And here we start being able to see atoms at this scale here. Okay, so this is graphene, which is another material, a novel material discovered maybe in the last decade or so. What was a recent Nobel Prize topic. And these dots here actually are atoms of carbon, and you can see them. You can see defects. I think I know what's happening. I think I'm probably touching this. Okay. So yeah, if you can click on that again. So these are defects, and you can see these are missing carbon atoms in a normally perfect array of carbon atoms. These are, think of a sheet, like a paper sheet, but one atom thick. Okay? And this is 2 atoms thick. And this is some hydrocarbon contamination. So this is the type of structure that we see there. So James, you can go back to that slide. So that's length scale. So being able to see things that we're familiar with down to the atom size. Okay, that's what we do with the electron microscopy techniques that we can use in the center. So this is done with scanning electron microscopy. So we look at the surface of the sample, and here we look at the inner structure of material with transmission electron microscopy. Okay, so this is one of the tools here. I would say our baby scanning electron microscope. It's probably in this case something like almost 2 years old, not even that. So what we do to use this microscope, we have electrons. They come down the specimen, and these electrons are focused, and they pinch on the specimen, and then we get a signal. And basically, we have a image of the surface of the sample. And what it can be used for, it's used for looking at the structure of hair. How if you want to know the details, something not very useful, to something like fuel cells used for hydrogen to produce chemical energy out of chemical energy. Okay, electric energy out of chemical energy. And these are image obtained at 250,000 times magnification. Okay, and then obviously when you project it, it would be another factor of 10 probably. So the scale here is 400 nanometers. Okay, so again, so human hair would be about something like 100 times the size of that. Then we have the transmission electron microscope, so the technology is quite different. We still use electrons, and the analogy here with the light microscope, we have a light source, we have some lenses. Lenses will be made out of glass, good glass, And then we have the object, and we magnify this image here with lenses. So in a transmission electron microscope, we have essentially the same principle. We use an electron source. We have lenses here. We have a specimen. The electrons go through the specimen. And then we have a number of lenses that form an image here. And magnification is obviously much larger, going out to 1 million times, maybe 10 million times in the most modern instruments. And then we have this new generation microscope at McMaster, the only one in Canada. There's quite a few in the world. And this is the way it works, is that you have a very thin specimen. You pull atoms with electric field one by one, and these atoms are ejected and they are reflected through this electric field here into a detector. And by measuring how long the atoms take to go to this detector and weigh them in the detector, we can determine which atom we have pulled out of the sample and where they came from. Okay? So we are able to reconstruct, eventually having all the atom positions, we reconstruct what the sample was before we pull atoms one by one out of the sample. Okay? So these are some images that are showing these really advanced capabilities we have. These are, again, graphene, so these single layer of carbon atoms, and these are defects on these single layer of carbon atoms. How they can be used? They can be used to generate electricity through these fuel cells. They're used for support material. What we want is design the number of defects, the right number of defects in this material to be able to produce or to produce electricity, let's say, and put it in simple terms. So this is one imaging mode, high resolution transmission microscopy. This is a scanning technique, so the same really high resolution. This is, you see, 2 nanometers, so the image magnification would be the order of the tens of millions of times here, projected on this screen here. This is an image of silicon, a grain boundary, so it's a defect between 2 perfect crystals. It's being specifically engineered to be for that orientation, but every dot you see here, every pair of dots is actually two silicon atoms. Okay, and this defect here would be detrimental to the electronic properties, but this specifically was designed to be produced that way. So we work with growers to produce these materials that way, to study them, and we provide information on the position of the atoms and how they can affect the electronic properties of materials. Let's go to the fuel cell area. You saw the image before. This is an image again of 250,000 times, but now it's being blown up even larger on the screen. So it's probably up to almost maybe 1 million times here. And these are carbon. This is carbon. So what makes coal is carbon. Okay. But it's obviously different type of carbon. And these bright dots here are something very expensive. They're platinum particles. These platinum particles are used as catalysis to promote the breaking down of the hydrogen and breaking down the oxygen in these fuel cells. And of course, you want to spend the least amount of platinum or money in these fuel cells. So you need to design these nanoscale materials. So these particles are in the range, in the range of a couple of nanometers in size. So you want to have very small particles, so they have a large surface area. You don't want to waste a lot of platinum because platinum is very, very expensive. So you need to work and design these materials so that they have nice distribution and then they have the right properties. So you need to characterize these materials. You cannot see this type of images with any other technique. So you need to use electron microscopy. So this is another image obtained in this case. Okay, at nearly 1 million time magnification at the microscope, and this is projected again. So you can see these particles. They will be in the order of a couple of nanometers in size. Okay, and you have larger particles. So you want the small particles. You don't want the large ones because the large ones have a lot of atoms, but very few of the atoms are on the surface. So you want to reduce the cost. So you need to be able to measure the sizes of these particles to explain the activity for when you use them as fuel cells, in fuel cells. And if you go to even, so this is 2 nanometers, this would be the size of one of these dots. If you go to higher resolution with a transmission microscope, then you can actually see the atoms. So these dots are atoms, and the bright dots are platinum atoms, and the darker areas here in between these bright dots, the blue ones in this diagram, are actually iron atoms. So what you can do is produce a lot of platinum atoms on the surface with minimal waste of platinum atoms in the core because you use iron. Iron is not very expensive. And so these images provide this kind of information. These images also provide an idea of the exact shape of the particle. You can see there some planes of atoms that are incomplete, so they are surface steps. And this is very useful for the chemist to know that you have the surface steps because they can tell then what are the sites that actually promote the breaking down of hydrogen and oxygen molecules when you operate in a fuel cell. So we provide this kind of information if not obtained other ways. And then in addition to that, you can actually not simply show images, but we can do chemical analysis. And I don't describe how we do it, but just take my word for it. In this case, I show one of the nicest one we obtained, where we can see that in this case, it is a platinum ruthenium. So ruthenium is it's an expensive metal, but it has advantages compared to platinum for fuel cell applications. And in this case, we can show that we have a platinum shell on the surface of these particles, just by the color. So platinum is in red, and ruthenium is in green. You can see we have almost a one atomic layer, or maybe two atomic layers of platinum on the surface. So you waste really very little amount of platinum, so we can minimize the cost of these fuel cells. And the main problem in the commercialization of these fuel cells is actually the cost. So platinum the platinum use is a major limitation. And we work with about a dozen research groups in Canada. We work with one of the leaders in the area of fuel cell development, Ballard, in Vancouver, and ASCC, which is a joint venture between Daimler and Ford, if I remember correctly, in the development of these fuel cells. And they come to us, we have a grant, they come to us to get this kind of analysis because they cannot do it by any other means. Okay? Then we can even go to high resolution. So there you can see the presence of atoms, but you cannot see where the atoms are. So you can even go to high resolution. If you have an electron beam that is smaller than an atom size, which is about an angstrom, so a tenth of a nanometer, okay, 10 to the minus 10 meters, we can even see individual atoms and can determine that in this case, in this material, which is a superconductor, we can determine that these atoms here are lanthanum and these red atoms are copper. Okay? And we can see even, not just in esoteric materials such as superconductors, but in structural materials. This is magnesium. It's a lightweight material used in cars. General Motors is using magnesium in cars at the moment. They're working with us to understand corrosion. And in this application here, to try to make magnesium stronger, because it's a very soft metal, but by adding appropriate amount of elements such as gadolinium, which is a bit expensive, but you don't put a lot, you in this case use less than 1%, then you can strengthen it, and these are actually individual atoms of gadolinium present in the matrix of magnesium. So you can see individual atoms, and these are glasses used for optical application, transmit information, fiber optical type of things. Not specific this material, but these glasses are used for optical application. And they're doped to improve the optical properties. And we have researchers from Lyon in France who come to us to do chemical analysis and determine how many atoms of ytterbium we have in this matrix here and where they sit in the unit cell. Okay? So these are spectra showing where these atoms are in the unit cell. Then go to real-world applications. Sure. A few minutes in real-world application I'm maybe more familiar with. And I want to talk about jet engines and power plants. And this is a case of materials used for aerospace. And jet engines are probably some of the most demanding application for materials. You have a huge number of different materials going from composites shown here to be able to capture or retain any flying pieces of turbine blade that might be broken during operation, so you don't have your plane just the fuselage being destroyed because of one of these turbine blades breaks. To other areas where we have that are very hot, such as the areas where you use nickel-based or superalloys. Okay, and these really run really high temperature. They're actually white hot. To give you an idea of how hot these are. And so we worked with researchers in the past at the University of Carleton. So actually this is work that I did when I was before coming to McMaster, still really important. It's trying to understand platinum, aluminium. This is a lightweight material, so it's used in these areas here. So it's not very hot, but still warm at room temperature really. So we want to improve the strength at high temperature, so you need to dope it with tungsten. It's a material that is very heavy, and it's used to improve this resistance at high temperature. So this material doesn't creep, but it can withstand high strength at high temperature. And we wanted to determine where the tungsten goes, so we were able to see that it goes into small precipitates, such as these ones here, concentrating in small areas, and we can do techniques such as electron diffraction to identify exactly the crystallographic structure. These are lightweight alloys. They're used for other application in aerospace. It's more for parts that don't need to go to high temperature, but it's a very light material and it needs to be strengthened. So it's used in the Airbus A380, and the reason why it can be used is because of additions of lithium and copper that forms precipitates, so very small inclusion of particles that are as thick as a few atomic layers, and we're able to show them just because of the imaging technique. We're able to show them how these are structured, and we did a combination of chemical analysis and simulation to demonstrate that our model that we put for these type of structure is really consistent with the experimental images. And then with these new techniques that we have, that's more recent work in the last year or so. This is a collaboration with Dr. Ismaili at the University of Waterloo. She had a postdoc who's now employed in our center to do atom probe microscopy, so this technique that I told you about pulling atoms one by one. So these dots here are these individual atoms. The green ones are calcium, cerium are in red, and zinc in gray. And the magnesium atoms, there are too many, so we don't show them. So it really shows that the distribution of these elements here is not entirely uniform. They form as clusters, which are visible with a microscope. But here we can actually determine what is the chemical nature of these atoms that are present. And they're literally one atom thick. Okay? And there's no other technique that can provide this kind of information. Let's go to another type of application that is really relevant for Ontario. This is application in energy in terms of power plants. This is Cantaloop Reactors. And I don't know if people realize, but 50% of the electricity in Ontario is produced by nuclear power plants. So we have a great interest in making sure these power plants operate not only safely, but for a long time. And we want to understand the issues in these steam generators. So we have basically the core of the reactor. This is where the irradiation occurs. We put the fuel here, then you have steam going through these core, and then it goes through these these tubes here, and it warms up, heats water, which then goes into these turbines here that generate the power. So we want to make sure that these tubes here don't break, and we want to make sure that they operate for a long time. So we want to understand the cracking mechanism in these reactors. So very important, not only for safety reasons, of course. And what happens in some of the components of the reactors, actually this one is not just the fuel, the steam generators, but actually the fuel bundles here. One of the problems is, that has been observed is following irradiation, some of these materials, these springs here, they evolve with time. After decades of operation, actually they form small bubbles in these reactors. And we want to control to understand whether they're going to be an issue in terms of operation. So what we are able to do to see from these bubbles here that are a few nanometers in size, okay, is that we can determine that they contain helium. And this helium is a byproduct of the reaction, the nuclear reaction. So the neutron that penetrate here in this material generate some helium atoms, and these helium atoms agglomerate and form these clusters, these bubbles, okay? And so we want to monitor this to understand whether there could be eventually a problem. And let me go back to these steam generators, okay, so these components here. And we want to understand in which conditions they can be safely operated. So what are the temperature conditions, how long they can be operated. And what we want to do is, this is a test material, so it's not the real one, but it's a test material that we can use potentially to develop the next generation of these materials in one of the nickel-based alloys. And what we want to do is show exactly, understand the microstructure. This is the surface of the specimen. These blobs here, they're called blobs, actually nodules. They're very tiny, so they're 2 microns. So remember, a human hair is about 50 times larger than this. So we want to understand what happens in these areas here. These are grain boundaries, so where 2 crystals meet. So we want to use advanced techniques to find out what's happening in the grain boundaries. So we use what is called a Fox stamping, the tool that we use to machine the McMaster logo on a human hair. We can actually do something much more useful. So we can mill here just like a knife, going through a loaf of bread. We cut this material, and then we can probe and find out what happens at the surface, and we can actually identify through these techniques, through these series of images, we can identify that actually there are cracks, and we have a lot of precipitates that are forming small particles forming in the surface. And with the atom probe, we can actually determine that you have these oxides and we have nickel present. So it really provides information on how these oxides form, and we can determine the composition of these oxides and the distribution, spatial distribution. And then we can look at these cracks, so they're very tiny cracks in the middle here, and the information of chromium carbides, chromium oxides at the grain boundaries. So very useful information. This is another alloy that has been subjected to very harsh conditions, and you can see cracks. This is something you don't want in reactors. So these are experimental alloys, and really very harsh conditions at high temperature. And we want to understand what happens at the crack tips here. So we use, again, this combination of techniques. We have a methodology, and this is a few steps to this methodology to be able to go and pick up right the tip of this crack and try to see how it works. So this is the crack tip as it progresses, and we're able to go with a microscope and find out what there is, and do a chemical analysis and find that we have a chromium oxide forming and a very cracked tip. And that's very useful for the metallurgist engineers, or the engineers in the power plant, to know whether they can actually use these alloys and whether it's safe conditions of operation. So with that, let me finish up. So hopefully I've shown you that we have a state-of-the-art facility that is really being used very effectively by not only the academics that have their own pet projects, but actually in real-life applications. And if you need any information, you can contact me. This is my email address. The website is this one. So I wear 2 hats. I'm the scientific director of the center, but I also have my own full research group. And this is my research group actually a while back, but it's still the same size of group. And I want to thank you on that for your attention. Thanks very much.